On July 19, 1976, all the cops in the city of Nice, France, were at the Société Générale Bank. The 4,000 lockboxes in the vault had been stolen. The vault's door was trapped. They had to make a smash through the wall next to the vault's door and sneak a cop in through the narrow hole who lost his pants in the process. The detective stood in the vault alone, without pants, holding a gun. The floor was strewn with 6 inches of paperwork, muddy tools here and there, and on the wall, 6 words were written, 6 historical words. On the vault's floor, there were checks, bank books, stocks, 30 kilos of jewelry, and a bag of pearls that were left behind. Among the white papers, you could easily spot the mugged tools, all kinds of equipment, the kind you would find in structures, the heavy ones. But what had they used this amount of tools for? To be specific, 2 tons of equipment. I will tell you. But before that, look at the vault door from the inside. The vault's 20-ton door is welded from the inside. No one is in the vault, and the vault's door is trapped from the inside. How did they get in then? Here, the art begins. On the back wall of the vault, 2 feet wide and 20 inches high, a tunnel. A hole was dug through 18 inches of reinforced concrete. Once it was confirmed that the vault was empty, the police managed to open the door. They started looking into the vault, and what they found was unbelievable. Chisels, hammers, blowtorches, 27 acetylene tanks. The surprising items the police found were a stove, dirty silver plates, and empty wine bottles. The thieves had a feast in the vault. Was it a lunch picnic for them? The whole scene was both artistic and overwhelming because, for sure, those thieves were no amateurs. On the wall, 6 words in French and a symbol. Without weapons, neither hatred nor violence, and the peace symbol. The cops followed the tunnel right away, a 30-foot tunnel that led to the city sewer line behind the bank. Despite being well constructed, the tunnel was narrow. Hardly a man would crawl through, much less 2 tons of tools. The cops kept looking into the sewers until they found a half-mile-long electric cable that provided the thieves with electricity. It led them to a parking lot where the thieves had wired it there. Later, the cops figured out that the thieves used the river to sneak in their tools. They entered via the river, used rafts to transport the tools, and then entered the sewer system. Out of the sewer system and into the bank vault, 12 detectives spent 4 days listing everything that was in the vault. The vault contained 4,000 lockboxes. At least 4,000 people had to be interviewed and had their backgrounds checked. The police had to investigate hundreds of current employees and even past ones. Police from all over France were sent to Nice City. The estimated amount of money stolen was $10 million, some of it cash, some of it gold ingots and jewelry. As mentioned, the vault contained 4,000 lockboxes, but only 400 were robbed, which was more than enough to make their heist the biggest of the century. The news about the heist was all over France. In France, the National Investigatory Agency is the Police Judiciaire, called the PJ. They took control of the case right away. With 18,000 detectives, good laboratories, and enough resources, the PJ is after the rats of the sewers, as the news called them. A week after the robbery, Boschetti, an inspector from the local police, was one of the many inspectors chosen to carefully examine the wreckage inside the destroyed bank vault. When he spotted the chisels, the muddy red chisels on the floor, he remembered that he had seen similar ones somewhere. A couple of weeks before the heist, Inspector Boschetti was driving in the city when he spotted Daniel Michelucci, a 34-year-old well-known criminal, driving his car along with another man whom Boschetti did not recognize. So, Boschetti stopped Michelucci to check his identity along with the other new guy. Then, Boschetti took a look at the trunk of the car where he found chisels, 18 inches long, made of tempered steel, sharp-pointed, and painted red, the exact same ones he saw at the heist scene. That day, Boschetti let Michelucci go. However, Boschetti told the PJ what he knew, and that was the first time Michelucci's name was mentioned, but not the last. The gendarmes in every place in the city and the nearby villages were contacted and asked to provide any information about any curious incidents they had run into in the last couple of weeks. 15 miles away from Nice City, in a village called Castagnier, the gendarme received a call about 5 suspicious men in a villa that was supposed to be empty. 2 gendarmes went to the villa and asked the 5 men about their presence. The 5 men claimed they were planning to have a party and had the villa owner's permission. The 2 gendarmes checked their excuse and everything seemed to be fine, but before the 2 gendarmes left, they checked the identities of the 5 men, and guess whose name was involved? Daniel Michelucci, the driver who had the Chisels in his car, and another 4 known criminals. The detectives went to check the villa, where they found muddy flashlights, the same type of flashlights used in the tunnel. When the laboratories checked the mud, it was confirmed that it was in fact mud from the tunnel. The PJ started looking for the 5 people who had been in the villa. The number of people who had been part of the heist was surely more than 5. It had to have been at least 20 people. Furthermore, 2 men, Adrian Zeppi, aged 54, and Francis Pellegrin, aged 38, were apprehended inside a bank in the Riviera town of Roquefort-le-Bain. They were attempting to sell gold bars that matched the ones stolen in Nice. Neither Zeppi nor Pellegrin had any prior police records, and neither of them had been present at the Castanier Villa when the police conducted their inspection. After their arrest, the detectives decided to wait no more. The arrest of Zeppi and Pellegrin would trigger the escape of the rest of the gang. On October 26th, the 100th day of the investigation, in cities like Nice, Marseille, Paris, and several others, 27 individuals were interpelled by around 250 uniformed police officers, detectives, and gendarmes. The term interpellation falls somewhere between an arrest and a subpoena. Acting solely on the authority of the police judiciaire, these 27 individuals, including not only suspects, but also people associated with them, their spouses, and even mistresses of the suspects, were forcibly removed from their homes in the early morning and taken to the police judiciaire headquarters in Paris and Marseille. At headquarters, all were held under a legal procedure known as garde à vue, which is a legal procedure where individuals are held by the police for up to 48 hours for questioning. During this time, they can't be physically harmed, can see a doctor if needed, and have the right to remain silent. They don't get a lawyer, but they should be given breaks and food. In practice, the timing of breaks and how long they're questioned depends on the determination of the interrogators. Most people can't endure the pressure and exhaustion and may confess or say things that don't make sense. The 13 individuals detained in Paris were set free within a day, and no charges were brought against them. For Marseille, this is where the Nice prisoners were brought, and after the 48-hour duration finished, all but 7 prisoners were set free. One of the 7 had nothing to do with the heist, but had a gun when the cops went to imprison him. The 6 were accused of being involved in the bank robbery and were instructed to be held in custody in prison. But among all the 6 individuals, none of them was the brains, the man who planned it all. In such a heist, there had to be a man behind it, the one who sketched, lined, and colored this French masterpiece. Seemingly out of nowhere, his name popped up. It was never known how the detectives got his name, but it is expected that one of the 6 had opened his mouth. They went to capture him, and to their surprise, he sat there seemingly carefree. It makes one wonder, was he incredibly composed? Or could it be that he wasn't the brain they thought he was after all? They caught, fingerprinted, and photographed him. And then, the 48-hour investigation started. Albert Spadari, at just 17, embarked on a daring escapade, running away to join the infamous Sicilian bandit Giuliano, inspired by the stories he had heard. However, the Italian police put an end to this adventurous journey, sending him back home. By the age of 19, Spadari had enlisted in the paratroopers and found himself in the midst of the French war in Indochina. There, along with some fellow soldiers, he confronted an individual they accused of robbing them, but the military court considered their actions as a robbery. Consequently, Bert and his entire squad were sent back to France in chains, and he found himself behind bars for 4 years. In 1958, Spadari went to North Africa. Working as a boilermaker, he became entangled with the right-wing secret army, opposing Algerian independence. His audacity even led him to plan an assassination attempt against General de Gaulle during a visit to Hyères, where his mother had a shop. Although permission was denied, Bert carried out a staged assassination, just for my own pleasure, claiming to have had General de Gaulle in his rifle sights, but refraining from pulling the trigger. However, his involvement in political terrorism later led to his arrest, and he found himself serving an additional 3.5 years behind bars. But the tale doesn't end there. Albert Spadari's life took yet another unexpected turn, leading him to a different world entirely. At 44, he had transitioned from being just a photographer in the charming town of Nice known for his skilled camera work at weddings and banquets. Alongside him was his wife, Audi, a nurse whose office was adjacent to his bustling photo studio. Their life was a blend of urban hustle and tranquil retreat, with a 2-room apartment. Furthermore, they bought a remote farm in the rugged maritime Alps. There, they undertook the task of restoring the house, with Bert, as his friends used to call him, doing much of the labor himself. The courtyard became Audi's canvas, adorned with exquisite urns and flourishing floral displays. Inside, Bert's extensive collection of literature graced the walls. They named it the Wild Geese, where they cultivated crops, raised chickens, and found peace. Bert really liked being alone and learned to enjoy it while observing the shifting North African sand dunes. During his custody, detectives relentlessly questioned him from morning until dawn. They offered him a doctor, which he declined, pointing out that no detective had physically harmed him, which was correct because they had the wrong person. Meanwhile, a surprising turn of events occurred. A search warrant was obtained, and Audi was brought up to the Wild Geese. Detectives noticed several hooks which raised their concerns. They also found an impressive collection of firearms, including handguns, carbines, and even an old crossbow, giving them a glimmer of hope. However, when they talked to the villagers, they learned that Bert wasn't the hunting type. He was a gentle soul who allowed rabbits to feast in his garden without taking any action. He couldn't even bring himself to slaughter a chicken for dinner. The village butcher had to do it for him. Detectives were told that he was the last person anyone would suspect of being involved in a bank robbery. Despite turning the Wild Geese inside out, the search yielded nothing. Even when a squad of gendarmes dug up most of the property in their hunt for the missing $10 million, they found no trace of it. As the second night of Albert's custody went on, they intensified their questioning. They faced him with the guns found in the Wild Geese, threatened and blackmailed him, tried to charge his wife with possession of the firearms, and sent her to jail. Albert broke and confessed he was the one, the mastermind, the artist himself. 2 years prior, Bert had rented a safety deposit box at Société Générale, and it lingered in his thoughts every time he ventured into the bank's vault. One day, when he found himself alone down there, he decided to thoroughly photograph the place. Driven by a daring plan, Bert scouted the city sewers for 6 nights, familiarizing himself with the underground labyrinth. He even obtained sewer plans from the town hall. However, his audacious heist required specialized tools and financial backing, so he turned to the Marseille underworld with his proposal. The mobsters were intrigued and joined forces with Bert's political associates. Over the course of 2 months, 2 teams comprising 10 men each, one consisting of mobsters and the other of Bert's political friends, worked tirelessly, digging a tunnel beneath the city. Most of them acted as porters, hauling equipment and removing dirt. They concealed the tunnel entrance each dawn to avoid detection by sewer workers. On the fateful evening of July 17th, just as the bank closed for the weekend, they launched their attack and pierced the final 18 inches of reinforced concrete. Their hearts filled with joy as they broke through. After welding shut the vault door and sealing all the vents, they enjoyed their first meal inside. Then they began cracking open the safes, armored cabinets, and lockboxes. To their amazement, they discovered the bank held a vast fortune, including the Friday and Saturday receipts of 70 prominent stores, the bank's cash reserve, and the treasures stored in lockboxes, piles of money, sacks of gold, and precious stones. As they departed in the early hours of Monday morning, Bert left a message at the scene. When detectives demanded the names of his political accomplices, Bert remained tight-lipped, giving no names. Only a small fraction of the loot had been recovered so far. Bert claimed he had donated his share, along with his political friends, to a right-wing political organization known as the Catena. They insisted their motive was solely to fund this organization, and it retained only what they needed for expenses. However, detectives doubted Bert's story, especially since they couldn't find any evidence of the existence of this Catena. Their pursuit continued, both for Bert's accomplices and for the missing loot. Finally, Bert was brought to the bank, where he provided details that convinced detectives he was indeed the brain behind this audacious heist. On May 10, 1977, just before his trial, Spadari met with the investigating judge and handed over some coded documents he claimed were crucial. The judge couldn't decipher them, so Spadari kindly offered to assist. As the judge focused on the documents, Spadari seized the moment, swiftly opened a closed window, and leaped onto the roof of a parked car. From there, he smoothly transitioned onto a waiting motorcycle and made his getaway, wearing a sly grin. Some reports later mentioned that the car owner received a 5,000 franc check in the mail to cover the damage to his roof. He never returned to jail, nor was the money ever found. The story of a mastermind, a genius, but this is only one story of many stories waiting to be uncovered. Subscribe now so you don't miss out on our upcoming videos, and please like the video if you enjoyed it. Goodbye, until the next crime.